Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Women's Radio and joining and welcoming my guest today, Sarah Lambie. And we are going to learn how she made a dramatic change in her life and her family's lives, and then share some of the work that she's doing now that brings her joy. Most of us realize that finding that sense of joy in our everyday lives is sometimes takes actually a lot of work, and it doesn't just fall in our laps. And 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 going through those learning and growing experiences are sometimes disconcerting, and we're not sure where we're going. And so it is really, really good if we can listen to other people's stories and learn from them, and then be able to identify things that are going on in our own lives. So I am delighted to welcome Sarah Lambie of Rescue One More, a not-for-profit that she and her husband began doing amazing work in Uganda to bring safety, justice, and healing to Ugandan children who have experienced sexual abuse. And welcome to Women's Radio, Sarah.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
And we're very, very happy to have you. And I think that you're joining us from your home in Dripping Springs, Texas. What a wonderful name. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. I'm in Dripping Springs, which is right outside of Austin, Texas.
Oh, what a great place. I love Austin. And I want to launch right into what happened in your life that encouraged you to leave what was working and familiar, and do something really audacious. And that happened, I think, in 2005, and then relocate to Uganda. And then what happened? What happened that
Yeah.
caused you to do it? And then what happened when you got there?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. If you had told me 15 or 20 years ago that I'd be running an international humanitarian organization on the other side of the world, I'd probably have fallen off my bar stool. Back in those days, my husband and I, we had one child and another on the way, and we were, both working in the software industry and climbing the corporate ladder. And when we weren't working hard, we were running marathons, we were traveling, we were, partying, we were living what I think many would consider the good life. But while we were definitely on our way to achieving our financial and personal and career goals, we both recognized that there was something missing in our lives. We had everything we needed, but something critical felt like it was missing. And that thing was, we found out, a deep sense of purpose and meaning. And so that sent us on a journey. And in that journey, through that journey, we found our faith, and we decided just to put our faith at the center of our lives. And that was really our turning point. Um, we
That must have been
both
a very big decision, since you made such a big trip. I mean, it had to be pretty strong.
It was. We both had a real heart for children in need. And just a few years after that, in 2009, my husband was offered a wonderful job with a humanitarian organization that focuses on bringing education to underprivileged children in Uganda. And we both knew that this opportunity would provide us, or at least put us on the trajectory to, achieving that, living out our purpose, living a purpose filled life. And
So
so
it's almost
we
like life
honestly,
came and met you where you were to give you that opportunity, huh?
yes, it was incredible. And we did, we had to do some hard things. We had to sell everything we have or give it away. And that actually ended up being like a really liberating experience, to not be tethered to things anymore. And we had to say goodbye to family, people that we loved really dearly, but we did it, and we went. And it was really a wonderful experience. I would say just a very rich experience for us, for my husband, for myself, and for our children. Yeah, my career at that point, I had been doing marketing and public relations in the software industry. And so what I did when I got to Uganda was I was running a consultancy in the US. And so in Uganda, I was able to kind of pivot that and start working with various NGOs, non-governmental organizations over there, to help them with their marketing strategies and their fundraising. And so it was a really wonderful time. I was working with organizations that were helping refugees, that were helping children, that were helping people who were impacted with HIV or AIDS. I was working for an organization that was teaching people how to start and run viable businesses so they could bring in a stable income for their families. So it was pretty rich. And during that time, we ended up adopting 3 children, three
My
wonderful
goodness.
children. Yeah, so we went from a family of 3 kids to a family of 6 kids and had 7 of some of our most amazing and memorable years in Kampala, Uganda.
I'm curious. I think a lot of, I mean, even when I think about taking a vacation trip abroad, it just seems like a huge learning curve. And you just literally out of faith picked up and moved to a foreign country, didn't speak that language, I'm assuming. Maybe a lot of people that you were, because of your husband's job, maybe you found more people that spoke your own language, but still look at all the things that you did in working with other organizations, and how did you find them, and how did one thing lead to the next? It just seems so amazing, and you make it sound so easy.
Well, I'll tell you that the first year was really, there was so much transition and change that first year that it wasn't easy. Um, I was dealing with our children who were experiencing a very, very different lifestyle, and also trying to get my business up and running there in Uganda with very few contacts outside of my husband's organization. But gosh, God was really good. I initially got a contract with um, World Vision. World Vision
Mhm,
Uganda was my
mhm,
first contract.
mhm,
And that's a great organization, obviously, to be connected to. I got to do a project with them that lasted about 4 years. And
oh,
through that, met many, many, as you can imagine, that's a very well established organization. So I was working with directors and other marketing directors, and then even the organization directors of other big child focused NGOs in partnership with World Vision. So that really kicked it off for me. And that took a lot of work to land that first contract with World Vision. It certainly wasn't easy. It was about a year worth of work and effort getting in. But once I got in there and could proved, that I was worth my value and could bring some value to the
mhm,
organization, they
mhm,
were very happy to introduce me around. And the longer I lived there, the more people I met. So I worked with big organizations with like World Vision, but I also ended up working with little like mom and pop shops, kind of like, missionaries would go over there and be doing work and kind of start a very small NGO to support their work. And I was able to
mhm,
step in and say, this is how we market, and this is how you can get awareness, and this is how you can build credibility amongst this audience, or here's the messaging that you should focus on with this audience, and here's how you run a fundraising campaign at the end of the year. So it was really
right.
rich and exciting. Yeah.
So now you've reestablished some ground under your feet at that point. And then, so how did it happen that you ended up being led into establishing the not for profit, choosing children who had been sexually abused as your focus? And then, how did it work from there?
Yeah, so I mentioned we adopted 3 children. One of those children was our daughter Vanessa. Now in 2016, we returned from Uganda to the US, and she graduated from high school in 2020. But you need to understand the backstory of Vanessa before I can tell you about Rescue One More, so you can really understand
Thank you.
what drove our passion. When Vanessa came into our lives, she was about 11 years old, and we came across her. She was actually sitting in the corner of a social worker's office, and we were meeting with that social worker to finalize the adoption of our other 2 children. And as you can imagine, Uganda is a very under-resourced country as far as
That's
like
well said.
or
Right.
yeah, and so this social worker did not have a lot of resources at his fingertips, and he basically said to us, look, I can't help you with this adoption because I've got to figure out where this little girl is sleeping tonight. The police dropped her off here. She's been sleeping in a jail cell for the last 2 weeks, and now I've got to figure out what to do with her. And we were like, oh my goodness, what on earth was this child doing sleeping in a jail cell? She was 11 years old. And he went on to tell us that she had been sexually abused by men in her family, and that when she went to tell the police what happened, they did arrest her uncle, but she wasn't able to go back home. It was a hostile environment. There was some anger there. There's a lot of stigma and shame associated with sexual
I
abuse
bet,
anywhere in
yeah.
the world, but especially there. And so, he explained that to us, and we said, well, look, we're happy to take her home until you can find a family member that she can be resettled with. And she ended up staying with us for 5 years. And at that point, by then we were in love and there wasn't another family member. So we adopted her, and
Oh, nice.
she came back home to the States with us. When she graduated from high school, here in the US in Dripping Springs, she said to us, Mom, Dad, I just really feel like I need to use my testimony, my story, to help encourage other children in Uganda who are going through what I went through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When we lived there, we knew that this was a problem. It's a problem everywhere, right? The statistics tell us 1 in 10 girls here in the US, 1 in 20 boys experience sexual abuse. In Uganda, that
It's
number
just beyond imagination that things like this happen every single day in our own country, doesn't it?
it's unfathomable. In Uganda, that number is actually quite a bit higher. It's more than 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys. And like I said earlier, the police are under resourced, the social services are under resourced, so they don't have a lot of resources to be able to help these children. I mean, if the safest place for a child who's at risk or is in danger is a jail cell,
Yeah, it's pretty
then
bad.
we've got a big problem. And so when she said that, we thought, well, if you share your story, children are going to be encouraged to come forward and go to the police like you did. And what are we going to have on the other end to catch them, to help
Yes.
them? And
Right,
so
right, right.
yeah, we did a lot of research. We started talking with friends in Uganda, friends here. We did a lot of praying, and in the end, we ultimately 2.5 years ago, we just decided, let's do it. Let's be the ones who start the organization that
Wow.
help these children. And we knew right away we were going to focus on prevention, bringing an end to sexual violence against children in Uganda, but we also wanted to give them the safety, the justice, and the healing that they need. And so those are the 4 pillars that we stand on: prevention, safety, justice, and healing.
Well, how do you go about doing that, Sarah? I mean, here you are in Texas now, and you're raising money, I guess, from just everywhere, probably, not just in the US, but around the world. Isn't that true? Is
It
that
is
correct?
true. Primarily our donors are here in the US and Canada. We've got a
Mhm.
couple probably in Europe. Um, but the way we started this, we were introduced early on in this desire, and when we decided we wanted to do this, we were introduced to an organization called the Children's Advocacy Centers of Texas. And the Children's Advocacy Centers, they actually exist in every state in the nation. And anytime a child experiences abuse, they go through the Children's Advocacy Centers, and they have this brilliant model where they set up a multidisciplinary team, which consists of a doctor who would do the medical exam, the police officers who would be in charge of that particular case, the attorneys who would prosecute the case, social workers, counselors, anybody involved in the safety and the recovery of that child. And so we met with the director of the Children's Advocacy Centers here in Texas, and she said, hey, let's see if this model works in Uganda. And she
Oh,
essentially handed us this proven model that works and
oh,
said,
how
go and
wonderful.
run with it. And so we went to Uganda, and it's actually been amazing what happens when you empower the people who are already in those places, those positions of work, but don't necessarily have the resources they need to carry out their work,
Right.
when you equip them with the resources and empower them to do their jobs, they all come together and just do an incredible job of achieving the mission. So it's really brilliant because it's not us going in and saying, hey, we're here to bring safety, justice, and
Right.
healing.
Right.
We're going to the local police, like the local leaders in each community, and saying, we want to equip you and bring you together to sit on a team to help these children.
I really admire everything that you're doing. I worked, or we were a media partner, so to speak, with an organization out of Washington that encouraged children, young adults who had experienced sexual violence to speak up. It's really like the only way to really bring things to light and for people to get the help that they need and for other people to know the light's going to be shown on them if they continue their behavior, if they don't end up in prison for it, right? So
Right.
it I can't imagine how exponentially difficult it would be to do that in another country, except for the fact that, like as you said, there are people there waiting and willing to do the work. They just need some of the resources and direction that you're able to provide for them. And then they actually do totally remarkable things.
Yeah, the laws are there and the laws are good. They just have limited resources to
Right.
actually implement and carry out the
Well,
laws.
brag about some of the successes that you've had. Tell us, some maybe a story about outcomes that, that warmed your heart.
Man, every morning we wake up and we look at our WhatsApp app, which is what enables us to communicate with our
Hmm.
staff and the people we work with in Uganda, and we hear more stories of children who are being served right now. And a lot of those stories are really hard and heartbreaking. But we are encouraged every day too, because there's a lot on the other end of those stories after months of, you know, um, trauma therapy and being
Wow.
in one of our safe houses where a child can get stabilized and get, you know, experience the healing they need to go on and continue and go back to school and go back maybe to live with a safe family member. It's always encouraging for us. We have, since we started just about 2.5 years ago, we have been able to provide 181 children with either safety, justice, and or healing services. And we've been able to rescue 88 children out of really
Wow.
dangerous situations, and
Wow.
they're in our safe houses. I think about 32 of those were actually trafficked children.
Yeah.
We're working always on being able to resettle them with safe and loving families. And we've done a good deal of resettlement. We've also been able to put 101 perpetrators behind bars. So we've had
Wow.
101 arrests, yeah, which is pretty
I bet
significant.
I bet your percentage exceeds that of most communities in the US.
Yeah, it's a bit of a different process there, but and that justice piece was that's what had us most concerned because corruption is an issue in Uganda, right? And
It's an issue
um,
everywhere.
it's an issue everywhere, but it's pretty common. And if you're a police officer, you may not have a vehicle to be able to go do a crime scene investigation or make an arrest,
Hmm.
but we can provide
Hmm.
that. Our social worker can go pick you up, take you over there, and let you do that arrest. And once
Hmm.
that person is arrested, our social workers are constantly checking in. And because that police officer is sitting at the table with the other members of his community action team, with the lawyer, with
Hmm.
the social
Got
workers,
it.
with the counselors, with the doctors, there's so much transparency and accountability.
That helps. Yes, that's
And so,
wonderful.
yeah, we're not seeing people getting bribed out of jail, not nearly to the extent that we thought we would. I mean, it's only happened a few times. So
Interesting.
we've had three convictions. Three convictions. There's a 5-year backlog on these
Oh
hearings
my
right now.
goodness. Mm-hmm.
So we're excited that we have had three convictions and expect many more. We are definitely staying on these cases and pursuing them aggressively. And we've been able to reach over, I think, 37,000 people now, like in person with
Goodness
education
gracious.
and prevention messages. So we're out there in the schools, we're out there in the communities, we're talking to kids, we're talking to parents, we're talking to teachers, we're talking to other local leaders, other children's organizations, talking about red flags, signs to look out for, things you can do to prevent this from ever happening to your child, what you should do if it's happening to you. So we're in the communities and we're making a lot of noise. We're breaking the silence around this, this thing called sexual violence, and it's working. It's working.
That's just the most incredible story. I'm curious about one thing, because some long time ago, I was introduced to some really amazing women who had been elected to, I'm not certain what they call it, but the country's parliament or the country's assembly. I'm not, and these women were real leaders. And I'm wondering if you've experienced support from women leaders in Uganda for what you're doing. And obviously the other people are there working on other programs as well.
Yeah, we, every leader that we've come across, man or woman, has been extremely supportive. What we've learned is this is a big problem. They all know it because a report was done in 2018, a massive survey, which revealed that it was happening to more than 1 in 3 children, and one in 3 girls, and 1 in 6 boys. So people are very aware of the problem. They just, like I said, don't always have the resources to address it. So when we said we're coming and this is what we're bringing, we had every leader we've spoken with has said, please come to our communities. In fact, we're
Oh,
hearing
wow,
from
that's great.
leaders in Kenya and leaders in Congo on the other side of Uganda
Uh-huh.
asking us to bring this program to them. So
That's great.
yes, female leaders, we've had a very good reception from them. Many of them have experienced it themselves, and they're happy to see that it's finally being addressed.
Well, I think that people have heard some of the stories about how women are treated in Africa, just generally speaking. I don't know country by country, but which isn't very, those stories are not very good. But I think that women, some of the other stories that I've heard are very encouraging, that women are taking more of their leadership back, so to speak, or they feel empowered. They're the ones that are really pulling a whole community together in many cases, et cetera. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, absolutely. Uganda is a very patriarchal society, but is working very hard toward equality. You do have women members of parliament and women LCs and women working in positions of leadership, and they're certainly behind the scenes in the communities, holding it together. And they talk about, it takes a village to raise a child. And that's certainly, you see the women extending hospitality to children, bringing the children who have been abused and can't go back into their homes. The aunties or the grandmothers stepping up and saying, we want to help, we want to support, we want you to be a part of our families. So yeah, we see an extraordinary amount of women leading this initiative to bring awareness to this significant problem and eventually eradicate it altogether.
Well, I just congratulate you on all the work you have done and are continuing to do. And it seems like an ongoing story. So I can't wait for more things to unfold in your path and come back and share some of those things. I would love to hear what you would like to tell anyone who's listening about how to, um, you know, how to judge their own experiences, so to speak, so that they know that they can experience that same kind of feeling of fulfillment and joy that you and your husband and your family have found.
Yeah, well, I think it takes some digging sometimes when you're looking for like what is my purpose? What's
Mhm.
going to bring meaning into my life? It may take a good amount of digging with your spouse. But what I see a lot is that may have put something in your heart, even as a child, that
Mhm.
really something you're really passionate about. We've even had friends come up to us and say, "Hey, like since I was a child, I've always had this image or this dream, and I
Mhm.
feel like that's the missing piece." And I would just say, letting you don't necessarily have to give up everything you have to achieve that.
You don't
You
have
don't
to
have to
sell it or
sell it
give it
all,
away and then
give
move
it
to a
away,
foreign country.
move around the world. But if you just stay still and do nothing with it, you're always going to have that sense of something's missing, that missing piece. But if
Mhm.
you begin pursuit, if you put one step in front of the other and
Mhm.
pursue, like, what would it look like? What if I did this small change to sort of begin putting the pieces in place to achieve this mission or this dream that has been on my heart? I think you might just find yourself being propelled and catapulted into an entire new direction that could be really exciting for you, for your family, and or for the people that you impact.
I totally agree with you, and I know what you mean. I've told people that I feel really close to that, since I was a child, where this came from, I have no idea. That two things I felt like I had to ac- do some work and accomplish some good in. One was in education, and the other, oddly enough, I have no idea how a child could think of this, was in prison reform. And I don't feel
Wow.
like I personally have done nearly enough in those two things, but I tend to agree with you. I like to think that by doing the things that we're doing here right now at Women's Radio and attracting people like yourself who are doing extraordinary things, that we're encouraging a lot of people to follow their hearts in the same way. And then contribute in something that just gives them lots and lots of joy. Because what else is there after all, right?
That's right. We get one shot at this life.
Might as well enjoy it.
Hmm. Yeah, and get
So,
the most
so
out
now
of it.
tell us the end of the story, so to speak. So, what are you doing now? I guess just you're running the not for profit full time. Is that correct?
That's right. My husband and I both run the organization. Our daughter is our spokesperson. We just had our second annual gala, so that was very
Oh,
exciting.
great.
Yeah, we're kicking off our year-end fundraising. Um, so we're focused right now on trying to open a new safe house, and that's what we're raising funds for. We travel back and forth to Uganda, I'd say probably once a quarter, kind of alternating and taking turns. Um, but we have an incredible staff there now, and
Oh,
so we're
wonderful.
finding the need to travel even less because the wheels have been in motion now for 2.5 years. People are really understanding their roles. It's
Mhm.
working, and so yeah, we're just running the day to day, doing, all the marketing and the operations and the fundraising side of it, while Ugandans are helping Ugandans in Uganda.
That's right. So, if people felt like they wanted to support the work that you're doing, would you give us all some information? And we'll include that in the text so there can be a link to your site, et cetera, et cetera. But why don't you just tell us how people normally find you and find ways to contribute to what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. We are online, obviously, and all giving can be done through our website at www.rescueonemore.com. One is spelled out. We can take donations there. We can also do gifts of stock.
Mm.
Yeah, so lots of ways to give. You can give monthly or one time. You can also follow us along on Facebook. We're at Rescue One More, and
Okay,
on
great.
and on Instagram at Rescue One More. So all that helps a lot as well.
Right, right. You have to speak to people wherever they are, and that's the new way to reach out to people for sure. Well,
That's
this has
right.
just been wonderful, Sarah. I've really enjoyed having you so much, and I do look forward to your coming back again. And blessings on all the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. It's been a real honor. I appreciate it.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you.
Bye bye.